believers, but that's just an event in ongoing popular struggles, very serious ones. A couple of years ago, there was a major struggle over privatization of water, an effort which would in effect deprive a good part of the population of water to drink. And it was a bitter struggle. A lot of people were killed, but they won it through international solidarity, in fact, which helped. And it continues. Now that's a real election. Again, the plans, the programs are being developed, acted on constantly by mass popular movements, which then select their own representative from their own ranks to carry out their programs. And that's quite different from what happened here. Actually, what happened here is understood by elite elements. The public relations industry, which runs elections here, quadrennial extravaganzas essentially, makes sure to keep issues in the margins and focus on personalities, character, and so on and so forth. They do that for good reasons. They know, they look at public opinion studies, and they know perfectly well that on a host of major issues, both parties are well to the right of the population. That's one good reason to keep issues off the table. And they recognize the success. So a couple of days, every year, the advertising industry gives a prize to the best marketing campaign of the year. This year, Obama won the prize, beat out Apple Company, the best marketing campaign of 2008, which is correct. That's essentially what happened. Now that's quite different from what happens in a functioning democracy, like, say, Bolivia or Haiti, except for the fact that it was crushed. And in the South, it's not all that uncommon. Notice that each of these cases is a much more extraordinary display of democracy in action than what we've seen, important as it was here. So the rhetoric, especially in Europe, is correct if we maintain our own narrow, racist perspectives and say, yeah, what happens in the South didn't happen or it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what we do, and by our standards, it was extraordinary, miracle, but not by the standards of functioning democracy. In fact, there's a distinction in democratic theory which does separate, say, the United States from Bolivia or Haiti. The question is, what is a democracy supposed to be? That's actually a debate that goes back to the Constitutional Convention. But in recent years, say in the 20th century, it's been pretty well articulated by important figures. So at the liberal end, progressive end, the leading public intellectual of the 20th century was Walter Lippmann. Wilson, Roosevelt, Kennedy, progressive. And a lot of his work was on a democratic theory, and he was pretty frank about it. He actually took a position not all that different from James Madison's. He said that in a democracy, the population has a function. Its function is to be spectators, not participants. He didn't call it the population. He called it the ignorant and meddlesome outsiders. That's you. The ignorant and meddlesome outsiders have a function, namely to watch what's going on and to push a lever every once in a while, then go home. But the participants are us privileged, smart guys. Well, that's one conception of democracy, and yeah, that's essentially, we've seen an episode of it. The population very often doesn't accept this. As I mentioned in just very recent polls, people overwhelmingly oppose it. But they're atomized, separated. Many of them feel hopeless, unorganized, and don't feel they can do anything about it. So they dislike it, but that's where it ends. In a functioning democracy, like, say, Bolivia or the United States in earlier stages, they did something about it. That's why we have the New Deal measures, the Great Society measures. In fact, just about any step, women's rights, end of slavery, go back as far as you like. It doesn't happen as a gift, and it's not going to happen in the future. commentators are pretty well aware of this, although they don't put it the way I'm going to, but if you read the press, it does come out. So take our local newspaper at the liberal end of the spectrum, the Boston Globe. You probably saw right after the election a front-page story. The lead front-page story was on how Obama developed this wonderful grassroots army, but he doesn't have any debts, which is supposed to be a good thing. So he's free to do what he likes because he has no debts. The normal Democratic constituencies, labor, women, minorities, and so on, they didn't bring him into office. So he owes them nothing. MIT professor, author, political dissident Noam Chomsky. We'll come back to this interview in a minute. You can get a copy of our show by going to democracynow.org. Stay with us.
So much pain, we don't know how to be but angry, feel infected like we got gangrene. Please don't let anybody try to change me, just me in the middle of a sea full of faces, some laugh, some salivate. What's in your alleyway? Recycling bins or bullet casing? It's not equal, it's not fair. We're different people, but we're not scared. We ain't never scared to pave a new path, make a new street, build a new bridge. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light? Free slaves, running songs, words were right. Now a new day's coming of you states done while the many are handsome. Your soul is alive, but they want them for ransom. The bass drumming is the anthem. We step to the heartbeats of our granddaughters and grandsons to rise. Together we rise. Together we rise.
Flowbots rise. Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we return now to Professor Noam Chomsky's address in Boston, the elections, the economy, and the world.
What he had was an army that he organized of people who got out the vote for Obama, for what the press calls brand Obama. They essentially agree with the advertisers. It's brand Obama that his army was mobilized to bring into office. They regard that as a good thing, and accepting the Lippmann conception of democracy. The ignorant and meddlesome outsiders are supposed to do what they're told and then go home. The Wall Street Journal, at the opposite end of the spectrum, also had an article about the same thing, roughly the same time. It talked about this tremendous grassroots army that had been developed, which is now waiting for instructions. So what should they do next to press forward Obama's agenda, whatever that is? But whatever it is, the army is supposed to be out there taking instructions and press for it. Los Angeles Times had similar articles, and there are others. What they don't seem to realize is that what they're describing, the ideal that they're describing, is dictatorship, not democracy. Democracy, at least, you know, not in the Lippmann sense, the approved, I pick him out because he's so famous, but it's a standard position. But in the sense of, say, much of the South, where mass popular movements develop programs, organize to take part in elections, but that's one part of an ongoing process, and bring somebody from their own ranks to implement the programs that they develop. And if the person doesn't, they're out. Okay, that's another kind of democracy. So it's up to us to choose which kind of democracy we want, and again, that'll determine what comes next. Well, what can we anticipate if the popular army, the grassroots army, decides to accept the function of spectators of action rather than participants? There's two kinds of evidence. There's rhetoric and there's action. The rhetoric, we know, it's very uplifting, change, hope, and so on. Change was kind of reflexive. Any party manager this year who read the polls, including the ones I cited, would instantly conclude that our theme in the election has to be change because people hate what's going on for good reasons. So